Chapter 8, Part 2. That evening we all wanted showers, except for Pablo, who didn't have his bath toys, so what fun would it be? In the next town we stopped at a motel, a low building with peeling blue paint and bars on the windows. When we opened the door, shiny cockroaches skittered across the tiles and disappeared into holes in the walls. The beds were metal, painted to look like wood grain, and covered in fuzzy, mud-colored blankets with beige peacock designs. Across from the beds stood a wardrobe of lacquered plywood that looked as if it could collapse at any moment. I volunteered to shower first, while Dika and Mr. Lorenzo walked to a corner grocery store to stock up on bottled water and salty peanuts. Angel and Pablo played outside in the parking lot with a tiny, super bouncy rubber ball. The shower was tiled with cracked green porcelain and had only one faucet for cold water. A foul odor rose from the drain, probably a dead rat or a heap of cockroaches, I guessed. Luckily, I had flip-flops to wear in the shower to avoid picking up fungus. I stepped under the shower spray, my lips pressed together tightly to keep out amoebas. At first, the shock of water was so cold it made me shudder and almost jumped right out. But my urge to be clean won. With frigid fingers, I rubbed soap over my pale purple-tinged skin and shampooed and conditioned as fast as I could. After a few minutes of pain, my body got used to the cold until it actually felt kind of refreshing, like a snow cone on a hot day. I brushed my teeth with bottled water, then wondered if I should leave the toothbrush sitting out so that the bristles could dry, which would reduce the germs on one hand, but on the other hand, cockroaches might crawl over it. Then there was always the risk that Dika would pick up my toothbrush and use it on her own tartared teeth. She seemed to feel that sharing toothbrushes was as harmless as sharing hairbrushes, so I always put mine out of sight. I shook it out as best I could and then hid it in my toiletry bag. Pablo's laughs and shouts floated in through the window. A few days ago he barely smiled, but now he couldn't contain his joy over a simple game of bouncy ball. I got dressed and called to him, "Time for your shower!" He ran inside, flushed and breathless from chasing the ball. I pulled the blue t-shirt over his head, revealing his bony shoulders, little barrel chest, slight pot belly. He climbed out of his pants and stood naked on his knobby-kneed stick legs. I made him wear my flip-flops, which were 2 times the size of his feet. "Gracias, Sophie," he said, still wound up. "See, you get to wear grown-up flip-flops in a grown-up shower now," I said. He stepped under the dribbling water and squeaked, "Cold!" He shivered and smiled and chattered his teeth, animated as a zany cartoon character. Goosebumps sprang up, and he looked like a little brownish-blue package of skin and bones. What if his grandmother thought he was too skinny, that we hadn't fed him well enough? What if she wouldn't let him come back with us? "Sophie?" Pablo said. His lips were the color of blueberries. "Yeah, Principito?" He spoke in Spanish. "Why is the water so cold?" I answered in English. I didn't want him forgetting all the English he'd learned. "Maybe 'cause we're in a poorer country," I said. "It costs money to heat up water." "Sophie?" "Yeah?" "Why are there peacocks on the blankets?" "Probably the blanket maker guy thought they looked nice. Maybe he always wanted a pet peacock." "Sophie?" With the kids I babysat, the question game drove me crazy, and I just zoned out and mumbled, "I don't know." But with Pablo, it was a rare treat. "Yeah, Pablito?" "Will my grandma know who I am?" "What?" I stopped lathering the suds and stared. "Of course. But I'm big now, and I used to be little." "Grandmas don't forget what their grandkids look like, ever." I rubbed the shampoo into his hair. There was a knock at the door. It was Angel, wanting to come in and wash his hands. "Hey, little man," he said to Pablo, "you look purple." "Angel?" "Si, senor." "I'm not a senor." "Sure you are. A little senor." "Angel, you think my grandma will know who I am?" "Of course. But if I fix your hair like this," He reached over and smoothed Pablo's hair straight up into a foamy mohawk. Now she won't recognize you. She'll think you're a rock star. She'll be real happy a rock star is visiting her. Pablo giggled. I wanted to hug him right then, and it wouldn't have mattered if I got soap and cold water all over my clothes. I rinsed him off, and then Angel wrapped him up in a clean towel and carried him to the bed. See? You're like a burrito now. We dressed him in his pajamas, and then he wanted to be a burrito again, so we wound the peacock blanket around him. Sophie? He asked. Yeah? Can you read to me an Angel? Angel smiled. Please? I picked out a few poems from my E. E. Cummings book. He was a poet who didn't like to use capitals or correct punctuation, and he tossed around parentheses like dashes of cinnamon and nutmeg. His poems didn't make much sense the first time I read them, but then later I'd noticed some of the lines flitting through my head, pieces of dreams. I figured that even if my brain didn't get the poem, some other part of me was soaking it up. Here is the deepest secret nobody knows. Here is the root of the root and the bud of the bud and the sky of a tree called life, which grows higher than soul can hope or mind can hide. And this is the wonder that's keeping the stars apart. I carry your heart. I carry it in my heart. Pablo looked thoughtful, wrapped in the peacock blanket. He turned his head and said, Angel? Si, senor. What's in your box? It's... Oh, he stopped and laughed. You're sneaky. You almost had me. He grinned at me. Not telling. Pablo looked at me as though I could convince Angel somehow. I shrugged. Pablo motioned to me to come closer. I bent over, moved my face close to his. Sophie, he whispered loudly in my ear, you think his mom's heart's in the box? At first I wrinkled up my nose, thinking of a real human heart, blood and vessels and muscles, slimy blue and red, pumping blood from nowhere to nowhere. And I realized it was a twist on the poem. I carry your heart in my heart. I glanced at Angel. Any trace of a smile had drained from his face. He got off the bed, took the box from his backpack, and wrapped it in 2 plastic bags. Then he carried it into the bathroom with him and closed the door. Soon the patter of shower spray started. Maybe you're right, Principito, I said. Maybe that's what's in the box.